just now. So maybe I'll just get started on a bit of the housekeeping technical stuff first before I launch into introductions. But I'll just start by saying a warm welcome to everyone that's joining us tonight for this presentation. The chat box will remain open and there'll be a bit of interaction throughout the presentation, just to use the chat box as best you can. So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome Gillian and Natasha to present for us tonight. Both of the girls did this presentation for rehab care as an internal CPD in December, and it was really interesting. And so we asked them, and we're delighted that they agreed to do it to the wider field here tonight. So just to introduce Gillian and Natasha, Gillian is a behavioural psychologist. She's over 25 years of experience supporting people using behaviour science in Ireland, the UK and the US. So she's been all over the place. But she's now, I'm delighted to say, a colleague in rehab care. So, and her work has primarily been in healthcare, but it includes supporting people with intellectual disabilities and neurodivergent individuals. She's also, in her spare time, which she doesn't have much, but she's an adjunct assistant professor in TCD and UCD, and she sits on the board of advisors with the IABA Research and Education Foundation. Gillian has a deep interest in supporting individuals, teams and families using motivational interviewing to draw on their own strengths, values and resources. And Natasha, I'm delighted to say as well, is another member of the rehab care team. And Natasha is a behaviour therapist with a background in psychology. And over the last 10 years, she's supported people from a variety of populations, backgrounds, ages, and across a range of settings to help them increase their quality of life using behaviour support. She's been working in rehab care for the past 4 years, and she works closely with people with brain injury, intellectual disability, and neurodivergence. Natasha's particularly passionate about co-production and uses motivational interviewing techniques to facilitate this process. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to the main event of the night and welcome Gillian and Natasha.
Thank you very much, Laura. 25 years can't possibly be. You're very, very welcome here this evening. As you see, Natasha and myself are in our fabulous matching offices here. I have no idea how Google did that. You'll see me looking off into the distance every so often. I'm like the Starship Enterprise here with about 3 screens to make everything work. But what we're going to hopefully take you through tonight, it's usually an introduction to motivational interviewing is about a 3-day course, and we're going to try to do it in 20 minutes and then a bit of application. So it's very, very much just a taster, so you can see if it might be something you'd like to use in your own practice or something you'd like to use some of the skills for. What you may also find is that a lot of them are skills you're already using. When I first came to motivational interviewing, I kind of recognized it and I felt really at home with it. And I thought, oh, that's what that's called. And that's why I'm doing it. So it's really a framework for good practice and engagement with the people we support. And engagement is one of the key aspects of motivational interviewing. And that's the reason why I asked Alan and Laura if we could keep the chat box open for this. So just to be aware, it is being recorded, so don't write anything too awful. But even if you just wanted to throw up there where you're joining us from, I see a few familiar names there, which is lovely. I'm joining you here from Shankhill, down in Dublin. Just been out for a lovely walk with the dog down by the beach. So we'll get cracking. And I think I'll have to open up the chat box now. There you go. Okay. So tonight we're going to have a look just at an introduction to what motivational interviewing is, and we're going to have Natasha's going to walk us through some of the more practical applications of it in real life. So, what do we want to know at the end of this hour? Hi Linda, how are you? Good to see you all the way from Scotland. First, we're going to have a look at what is motivational interviewing itself. We're going to have a look at the spirit, or what they sometimes call the heart set of motivational interviewing. We'll then get a bit more practical and look at the processes and skills used in it and look at where it can be useful. And if you have any questions as we go along, do just pop them in the chat box, because say this is probably hopefully a little bit more chat based than some trainings. So what is it? We all know from the research that quite often it's not the type of therapeutic approach you're using, but the fact that it's a good therapeutic alliance that affects change for the people we support. It's been a constant predictor for good treatment outcomes. And we also want to see active participation. The more we can get the service user, and this, we're all talking about co-production at the moment, and this is really where motivational interviewing fits in, because it's a collaborative effort with others. It's not something we're doing to people. We also know that there's a lot of soft skills that go with our job. And I have to say, it's probably one of the small niggles I'd have with the ABA training that we have, following the BACB curriculum. It's not particularly hot on some of those soft skills. And so you probably know yourself, when you first come out all enthusiastic with your clipboard and graph paper, but you're not sure what the heck to actually say to somebody or how to manage yourself in the workplace. So this is where motivational interviewing can really come in to its own. It's the how to do what we know what to do. So we mentioned already, it's a collaborative, goal-oriented communication style. So we're really trying to get people to talk, because if we can get people to talk, we can get them thinking, and we can start to steer that conversation, hopefully skillfully, in the direction towards change. It's made up of a variety of skills. And as I say, some of these skills you're going to recognize, you already have them and you're already using them. So this might just put a name on them. It's about acceptance and compassion. And that's, I think, something we all came into this work to do. We all wanted to wear white shoes and help people in some sort of way. We're not here for the money, God knows. So that really comes through with this model. It's evidence-based. So there is research out there showing it is effective. And it's a really strong basis for creating therapeutic alliance. Okay, this is where I want you to open up your chat box and have it at the ready, because I want you to think about your own approach to supporting other people. There's various styles of therapeutic input, and they can range right from the sort of following style, that very psychodynamic approach, sit on the couch and say nothing and sort of let the person lead you where they want to go. And then at the other end of the scale, there's very much a directing style of therapeutic approach, where we, tell somebody what they're doing step by step. So something like CBT might be more falling on this end of the spectrum. So just take a minute and pop into the chat box there. Where do you think, if 1 was following and 10 was directing, where do you think your style would fit? Would you be bang in the middle with a 5? Would you veer a bit more towards directing? Are you a bit more of a follower? So just pop that in the chat box there. And I'll wait awkwardly and see if anybody's actually behind those screens. Okay. Oh my goodness, some very different styles coming here. So already we've got a range from sort of 3 all the way up to 7. Okay, and then a lot of them are sort of sitting somewhere in the middle, but a little bit possibly more towards the directing style by the looks of things. Marie, slap bang middle, good woman. Very, very nice. Where motivational interviewing sits in this scale is round about where a lot of you came in naturally. It's just that upper end, and we call that guiding. So we let the person sort of, take control of the situation, but we might just put some boundaries on it, and we're always trying to direct it at that time. And Linda, I love your point. It absolutely does depend on the person, because we want to respect their autonomy. And it also depends on how much self-awareness they have of how much they can be in the driving seat. But in motivational interviewing, they often describe it as a dance. So say you're the male partner, just to get all gender traditional about it. So you're guiding the dance in a certain direction, but the other person is absolutely in control also. Now, I mentioned there that it has got a good, strong evidence base. So it started out, two chaps, Miller and Rolnick, back in the 80s. And I think Rolnick was more, he was a clinical psychologist and from quite more that guiding end of things. And Miller was much more the psychodynamic. And they started working in addiction studies primarily. This is where it was first used. So you can see way back when there's about 6 studies done, and they were primarily in addiction studies. Whereas the last while, it's shot up and it's been used in so many aspects, still primarily in healthcare. There's a lot of training for GPs, for example, because it's a good way to get buy-in. Oh, is my mic off? Sorry, no, I'm on 2 computers, whoever was asking that. No, sorry, it's the computer asking that. Ignore. So, like I say, GPs are using it a lot because traditionally they thought, oh God, I don't want to talk to my patients. They're only going to slow me up. But actually, it can be a really efficient way to get buy-in to treatment adherence for GPs. When I was training, I certainly know there was a bunch of police on it, and they were using it in interrogation, but they were using it for interview skills to try to sort of get to the core of what was going on when they were talking to somebody. So it's used in a huge variety of areas now. We're all fairly familiar with that trans-theoretical model of change, Praksha. That idea of pre-contemplation, where we're not thinking anything. Contemplation, yeah, probably should think about drinking a bit less these days. And then you go, do you know what? Actually, it's time to do something. So I better prepare and lay some groundwork and read some Alan Carr books and whatever it might be. Then you take action, and then you go into that maintenance phase, and then you might relapse and you've got to start again. That's very common. And we know that in behavior because it never stops. Whenever we get a handle on one issue, life changes and something else comes up. So behavior support really is that constant spiral. Nothing is ever perfect. And so that's where motivational interviewing is very useful. So this is how it's formally defined. It's a collaborative, goal-oriented style of communication with particular attention to the language of change. And you'll hear that later on when Natasha is guiding us through some of the types of language that we use and the types of questions that we use. It's designed to strengthen a personal motivation for a particular goal. It's no use, you know, that when we tell people to do things, they don't often do it, unfortunately. Nobody likes being told what to do. So motivational interviewing is a way of building up that intrinsic motivation in them to make the change. We can't provide that extrinsically. So I mentioned at the beginning there that the most important thing they push in motivational interviewing is this idea of the heart set of it, the spirit of it. And again, this isn't something that we're really taught particularly well in ABA courses. We might do ethics and things like that, but this really combines a few areas. It's really based in collaboration. So like I say, co-production is what we're all aiming for here, and collaboration fits right into that. We're looking at acceptance. We've probably all supported people who were thinking, oh dear God, it'd be so lovely if I could change that behavior, but perhaps we don't have the right to. Perhaps there's things about our behavior that other people might like to change. Thinking of my husband here. But you know, he's got to accept me for what I am. So there is that, bringing that acceptance into the therapeutic relationship. There's evocation. Evocation? I'm not quite sure how you pronounce that. But it's about that you're trying to bring forth the person's own expertise. We're trying to change behavior, and that is very much something personal. And who is a better expert in the person than the person themselves? Because we sure as heck aren't. So we're trying to evoke the strengths the person already has and bring them to the fore. And the last thing that we look at in the spirit is compassion, that we want to be there, that we have a genuine vested interest in the person succeeding and whatever issues that they're facing at the time. There's 4 foundational processes. So here's where we're getting to the more nitty gritty. So you'll recognize this a bit from Praksha's cycle of change. The first thing we need to do is engage. You can get this right and you can get this wrong. I got this completely wrong last week. I met a new client for the first time and I said, so would you like to have a chat? And he said, no. And I said, okay, maybe later. He said, not later, not ever, no chat. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to go back and work on this a little bit. So we do have to look at our engaging skills. So I'm really gonna have to focus on those now for this person I'm supporting. Once we've got that therapeutic alliance with the person and they're ready to work, then we can start to focus. What is the issue? Now, we know that in our work, quite often we know the issue in advance. It's probably come in on a referral form or, an incident behavior reporting forms. So we know roughly what the change is, but we need to sort of work with the person or with the team to sort of focus on that, because you know that when we go into a team, they kind of go, well, there's this wrong and this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. And you think, one problem at a time, which one is most important? How should we prioritize this? The next thing we need to do is get that team or that person talking so that we can try to shift the balance a little bit towards training. And only when we've got all that done can we do planning. So it's not a case that we jump in and say, I know what to do here. You should do X, Y, and Z. That is the very last step and done in collaboration. Okay. I want you here to focus on that lovely big slab of greasy bacon and open up your chat box. And if bacon isn't your thing, I put up a slice of chocolate cake for you. What feelings in you did these bring up? I'll take that awkward pause again for a moment. So when you see this, are you thinking, you thinking, oh God, I'd love to, but probably not great. Excitement. I love it. Enjoying the fine things in life. That would be a nice treat. Okay. So I couldn't be having it for breakfast every day, but pancakes. I like your idea, Stephen. Very nice. Ooh, Phil, temptation, but also guilt. Yes, absolutely. Yes for cake, no for bacon. I shouldn't. I know, Murray. That's usually my initial reaction too. I'm going, I want it, but I don't want it. And that's exactly what we're feeling. We're feeling ambivalence. And I must have had a really cruddy English teacher when I was in school, because I used to think ambivalence kind of meant, meh, can take it or leave it either way. But actually, it's the opposite. Ambivalence is about having strong feelings in both directions. So one side we're saying, but I really like what I'm doing. It's working for me. It gets me the connection that I need with other people when I run off into the street. But yeah, I can see there's reasons that's probably not a great thing for me. So it's actually feeling very strongly in two different ways about whatever the focus behavior is. And our job in motivational interviewing is to try to shift the scales towards change. Okay, so there's always arguments to be made for not making any change, and there's arguments to be made for making the change. And that's where we're trying to steer the conversation and steer the change talk. Oh, I better hurry up. Okay, how do we increase the likelihood of change? Like I said, intrinsic commitment is what works here. Telling somebody what to do just doesn't cut it. We've all been there, tried and failed, but I've told them 100 times what it is they need to do. They just don't do it. We need to build up that intrinsic. And we're going to build that up by talking about the issue, by helping the person identify the benefits of change and coming, not us telling them, but them coming up with that themselves. Because we know there's some sort of aspects here, like there's, we know that something we say ourselves, we're going to take more seriously than something we've been told, because that's our beliefs. So they're going to be stronger. We know the recency effect. So we want them to come up and say, well, actually, it would be great if things change because, and we want to then jump on that opportunity. We might also need to see if we need to increase the confidence to succeed. And that's, I think, really big when we're supporting teams, when maybe there's been a long-standing problem and they feel that they've tried everything and nothing works. And so we've got to build their confidence and their belief that actually things can change. So we need to get people talking and stating their intention to change and their reasons for it themselves. Now, there are avoidable collisions. If I had said to you, do you know what? There's lovely cake there, but you really shouldn't eat it because it's very bad for you. It's going to clog your arteries. Quite often, your natural response is, sod you, I'm having the bloody cake. So we have this natural inkling to sort of go against when somebody else tells us what to do. So this is going to help us try to fix that. We call that the righting reflex. Coming in with the life ring and saying, I know what's going to work for you. Here, try this. And it just makes the other person go, oh, sod off. So we want to try to avoid that. So we want to avoid that righting reflex. We want to avoid coming in as the expert because we are not the expert in that person. We are not the expert in their own life situation. If we're working with teams, those teams are working with that person day in, day out. They are far more expert than us dropping in with our clipboard. We want to avoid chatting and just going around in circles. It's nice and it's very important for the engagement part, but not when you want to move the process on. We want to avoid the blaming trap because, again, that's going to put people on the defensive and we want to get them getting constructive. And we want to avoid the labeling trap. Oh, well, he's always going to be sensitive to that because he's got autism. It's not inevitable. There's still things we can do. And I don't know why I put the chat trap, right? Then there's the skills we use. And again, these are going to sound very, very familiar to you. We refer to these as the ORs. So O is for open-ended questions. We know that closed-ended questions tend to shut down conversation, whereas open-ended questions allow the conversation to grow and to breathe. And that's when we're going to get talk happening. We use a lot of affirmation. So we're highlighting the strengths that the person has. And, it might be, certainly in the addiction field when they were working, it might be a really, really tough case. The person was really not doing brilliantly. They'd say, well done, you managed to get here. So this is something that's really important to you. And you made time in your day and got on the bus and actually got here. So, showing commitment, fantastic. So whatever positives you can find to affirm, that's going to help build that confidence. We use reflections an awful lot, and we use a lot of different types of reflections. So you could have simple reflections, just repeating back what the person said, and that might open up the conversation more and encourage them to tell us more about it. Or sometimes we might be using more complex reflections. So we might be reflecting themes of, okay, I'm hearing that, it's really community, getting out and about in community that really seems to be a common thread amongst all the problems you're talking about here. What is it about the community issues? We also use summaries. They call this sort of like the rudder of a conversation. And summaries are very, very useful. First of all, we know that they're great to make sure that we're using our active listening well and that we've heard what is going on. And it reassures the person, yes, I've actually been heard. But also they can be really important to hit on the topical points from a conversation and bring some of the themes together. On the other place, I shouldn't say this, but they can be very useful, is if you are stuck in that chat circle and somebody's going round and round in circles, it allows you to move the conversation on. So you might be saying something like, okay, so yeah, I hear you've been talking a lot about the issues in the community, but how do you think that affects Joe? So you can actually summarize and then move the conversation on. So it's really about using conversation skills in a really deliberate way. At this stage, I'm going to hand over to Natasha, who is going to talk us through how this can look in our practice day to day.
Thank you very much, Gillian. That was really lovely. So I think one of the biggest things we've all got from motivational interviewing and just life in general is people do not resist change. They resist being changed. I know personally, if I'm told to do something, I'd nearly go out of my way to do the opposite, just out of pure contrariness at times. So that lovely quote is actually from Peter Senge, and it's really applicable in day-to-day life. And the people we support, if you're working in a health and social care setting, have been told, especially if they're in a service for a very long time, they have been told what to do from the word dot. You know, that's their reality, that's their life, that's what they've always experienced. So you tend to get responses that fall into two camps. So one is, I will not do anything you say at all. And the other is, I will go along with it, whether I'm comfortable with it or not, which is quite sad, but it is people's reality. So basically, we can then use motivational interviewing as a tool to actually, I suppose, engage with these people that we're supporting and see what they want and what's important to them and how we can support them with that. So it leads us on into the bigger piece around co-production. So about motivational interviewing then, it sounds lovely. It really does. We all know that. I suppose what we're looking at then is how can we use it in our day-to-day practice. So the two biggest areas we have found that it's really, really useful is in co-production, so with the people we're supporting, and to work with staff teams then to get buy-in to support the person that we're all supporting together. So before we go any further, I'm, as Gillian did, going to get you to hop into the chat box there and let me know what co-production means to you. I too am going to hop on the awkward pause bandwagon and hopefully we'll get some responses. Lovely. Equal partners, doing with, not for. That's a really, really big one. Thank you, Emma, and thanks, Gillian. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Laura. So I'm seeing some really lovely responses. What I am getting is collaboration, that we are there to support the person. We're there to help them go on their journey. We're not there to tell them what to do. That people are their own experts, that we're supporting the person, not leading them. So that is absolutely lovely. And it's the way it should be. And there we go. Sophie's jumped in with the supporting people to amplify their voice. That's lovely as well. And it's a really big part of it. Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Okay, so co-production is around collaboration in treatment and intervention design. So we create interventions with the person, not for the person. I could design an amazing intervention package to support someone with something. You know, I could have all these different components. And if the person didn't want that, you know, it wouldn't go anywhere. Understandably so, nobody should be telling you what to do with your own life, you know. Basically, we can use motivational interviewing in this context to increase motivation to engage with the intervention, to see if the person is open to that. I know as someone who smoked for a long time, I would not have been open to intervention on that, you know, and we're all entitled to make poor decisions. If the person understands, they can make poor decisions too. There may not necessarily be a requirement for intervention. So that's important to explore that as well. And looking at intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So sometimes people can really want to do things, but really struggle with the motivation to build that motivation to actually get to the stage where they're acting. So this could be motivational interviewing can be really, really useful for that. It's also really, really useful to support people to build autonomy, to, I suppose, provide them with information that they're entitled to. This really ties in with the Assisted Decision Making Act. There is a process in motivational interviewing called elicit, provide, elicit. So that can be really useful when, I suppose, looking at what information a person already has about something to see where they are. And it's a really good place to open up a conversation about something, about anything. Now, as Gillian said, you would not jump straight in with this. You need to have some sort of therapeutic relationship with the person. I don't know how I'd feel if a stranger came in and just started talking at me or telling me things. You know, I don't know how comfortable I would feel. So that's why I suppose the therapeutic relationship is so important. And that's a big part of motivational interviewing. But once we have that, we can look at the elicit, provide, elicit. So I might ask someone, well, what do you know about smoking cessation? Or what do you know about extinction? What do you know about reinforcement? And they can tell me what they know about it, or what they think they know about it, or, you know, whatever information they have about it. Then I will ask them if they're open to me giving them further information on it. So then it's all very consent-based, and they can take the lead with that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can support someone. And at that point, I might ask them what they heard. So what they understand of that terminology, say reinforcement now. It gives us the opportunity to, I suppose, provide information to the people we're supporting, while also creating that piece of motivation. So it ties in really nicely. Now, I have found while using motivational interviewing, depending on the people I'm working with or the person I'm working with, I might have to, I suppose, make some, slight alterations, not to the process, but into my approach, in order to make it accessible, which is exactly what we all need to do. So working with certain people, I might simplify the questions. I know personally, I do tend to go on a little bit. I talk to a drywall. You know, I just talk a lot. So if I'm talking to someone who maybe has an auditory processing disorder, or maybe, you know, I suppose has a cognitive impairment, or maybe just needs things broken down a little bit more so that the information is accessible, I would be highly conscious of making sure that my questions are simplified, so that basically that what I'm providing is accessible. I've worked with many people over the years who say yes to anything, whether they understand or not. So I find it can be quite helpful to break that down a little bit, break down the questions and what I'm asking into a way that's accessible for the person so that they can actually engage. Something else I found very, very helpful is avoiding why questions. So from my experience of working with a lot of different people, there seems to be a history associated with why for a lot of people, a history of blame, where people perceive the word why as I'm in trouble. So it can make people uncomfortable. And if there is that association, you know, we don't want to make people uncomfortable. We want them to, I suppose, be able to engage with the process. So I tend to avoid why questions. So instead of saying, why do you do that? I might say, what about that feels good for you? Or what about that do you like? So it's just reframing the question slightly, but just makes it a bit more accessible. Something else I found really, really useful in the work that I'm doing is using a readiness ruler. So a readiness ruler is like a typical ruler, and it is basically from a ruler that has marks from 1 up to 10. And what I can do then is I can hold up this ruler and essentially use it as a prompt. So I can say to a person, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how open are you to changing this behavior? Or how open are you to trying something new? And they can then show me on the ruler where they are. So that might be a 4, that might be a 2, that might be a 9, you know? And when you have that therapeutic alliance and, you know, they understand that you're there in a supportive capacity and you're not there for judgment or to tell them what to do, you will have that honesty, you know? So people will tell you where they're at. And if you know where they're at, honestly, you can then provide, I suppose, the support that's needed. So yeah, it's really useful. It's also really, really useful in terms of getting staff buy-in. So this is an issue that we do see in many, many places, where staff teams may be unlikely to implement an intervention. So we could see they might implement it at the start, but after a month or two, you can see implementation fidelity sliding off. You might send down a lovely intervention package and the document might never even be opened. Or someone or team could look at it and say, do you know what, I don't think this is right for the person, or that looks like too much hard work, or whatever it is, and they just won't do it. And the only people losing out in that case is the person being supported. So I find motivational interviewing just really useful for increasing implementation fidelity. So having that conversation with staff teams. So when we sit down and we go through the intervention, we can actually create a dialogue around that. So we can use it in one-to-one or in group settings. I find generally small groups are best. If you kind of go over the 3 to 4 mark, you would find that maybe people are less likely to engage, or maybe one or two people will engage on quite a high level and maybe other people won't engage quite so much. So the smaller groups, I feel, facilitate this a little bit better. What we're looking to do in this situation is to facilitate staff engagement in change talk. So that's what we're looking to do with motivational interviewing. We're looking to facilitate change talk. So change talk, as it says on the tin, is talk about change. So changing your behaviour. And the research has indicated that if someone engages in change talk, they are more likely to change their behaviour. So that's what we're looking at measuring with motivational interviewing. That's what we're looking at facilitating, and that's where we want to go with it. So this can be done as part of the initial process, consultation, where you've met with the person, you've designed your plan, and you're now going to the staff team and the person to make sure that everybody's happy with it and we can do it. Or it can be done as a problem-solving exercise, where maybe the plan is already in place and it's just not being implemented. So this is a really collaborative approach, and by everybody being able to, I suppose, put their cards on the table and feed into it and have those conversations, it does tend to increase buy-in. As all of our own ideas, as Gillian said, we are more inclined to engage with our own ideas rather than other people's. Okay. So I suppose there are two things now. So what we might do is myself and Gillian might just do a little role play so you can kind of see what motivational interviewing can look like in action. And following on from that, we will go through, I suppose, where you can go from here. If you're interested in, I suppose, exploring motivational interviewing that a little bit further. And after that, I'd say we'll probably do questions if I'd say we would have time. Is that all right? Brilliant. Okay, so I am going to use motivational interviewing with Gillian. So thank you.
Just to say, I've just remembered that this is being recorded and this is a real life situation, so I'm putting it all out there.
If you want, we can, like, happy to swap, or
Yeah,
are
yeah,
you okay with this?
fine. It'll only increase my intrinsic motivation if I know it's recorded somewhere.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, hi Gillian, how are you?
Very well, thank you. And thank you for a lovely presentation.
And thank you. So how has your week been?
Busy. I've been on the road a lot and in the car, and yeah, it's just juggling everything. The kids, music, work. Yeah, it's been pretty busy.
It sounds like a lot, especially if you're on the road quite a bit and you have kids and a family as well, and your career and everything. Like, it must be really hard to keep, I suppose, all the balls in the air.
Few of them drop every so often, but mostly holding on.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear it. It can be hard though, and sometimes we do have to deprioritize certain things.
Yeah, you can have to pick and choose, pick your battles.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. So is there anything that you have dropped?
Take sitting in the car and basically become a trucker. I'm living in McDonald's and living
Yeah,
on coffee, and yeah, been looking after myself as much as I have
yeah.
had the opportunity to do in the past.
Yeah,
Well,
well, that's really understandable. If you're on the road that much, it's really, really hard to make sure that you have healthy snacks available to you. And sometimes it's just easier to go for the likes of McDonald's. It's warm, it's there, it's very accessible, it's hassle-free. Absolutely. So, totally understandable.
yeah, and I haven't got help. I haven't, like, I used to go to the gym like 3 or 4 times a week, and I haven't been there in God knows how long.
Yeah, it's really hard to find the time for everything.
Yeah, you kind of
Um,
think, oh, I need an hour and a half, by the time I've got changed and headed off, and I'm just going, where the hell is a, clear run of an hour and a half in my day?
yeah, you seem to be, I suppose, a little bit, what's the word? Not quite frustrated, but maybe a little bit exasperated that you are, I suppose, not in a place to practice as much self-care as you would have previously.
I just don't feel safe. I used to be stronger, and I can kind of feel it in my body that I'm not as strong as I used to be. I mean, that's probably a bit of middle age, but hey, we'll deny that.
Well, look, it's hard when that changes, when you've gone from being strong and fit and able to run around the place all of the time, and it's really, really hard when that deteriorates a little bit. You just don't really feel good in yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure it probably affects mood too. Thank God I haven't noticed it too much, but it can't be good for me on any level.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of research saying that exercise obviously produces a lot of endorphins, so it can help with things like sleep quality, overall quality of life, how you feel overall in your body, and energy levels as well. So a lot of people find a lot of benefit from it. So I totally get where you're coming from.
Yeah, no, it's not so bad that I kind of notice my quality of life being awful or anything, but it would just be nice to have a bit more viv.
Exactly. Like, I know you're saying that you don't really notice any difference from not going to the gym, or very little difference, but at the same time you would like to see, I suppose, a bit more energy from yourself and maybe feel that bit stronger.
Yeah, I would like that. I just got to find the
Yeah,
time somewhere.
it's
But
really
I
hard.
have the time, but I just got to organize my time better, maybe.
Yeah, and that can be really hard to do, especially if you have so many things going on, you know? Is there anything you think you could do maybe to make that a bit easier for yourself?
Hmm. Now you generally get me thinking here. Um, One thing maybe it doesn't have to, I keep thinking, where am I going to find an hour and a half of my day? But maybe I've got to kind of change it a bit and think something is better than nothing. And, even if I just pop my head into the gym for, 20 minutes, half an hour, that's better than nothing, I suppose.
It would be a lot better than nothing, yeah. I think that that sounds really good. I know in an ideal world, we'd all spend a certain amount of time doing all of these things. But I do think, as you said, just with life being the way life is, it can be very hard. And as you said, 20 minutes is a lot better than nothing, you know? It's time for you.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I actually really enjoyed going to the gym. Stick my headphones on, forget about the world for an hour. And yeah, so I probably have missed out on that me time. But, I suppose I've readjusted and think me time is sitting there scrolling in front of a phone instead. And maybe I just need to sort of get back into, actually, is that me time? Is that a good use of me time?
Exactly. And a lot of us have fallen into that trap. It's our phones are so accessible for us now. They're right there. It's very easy to switch off by just scrolling on whatever app is just there on your phone. And, like, our phones are literally right in front of us all the time. So it's very easy to say, I'm going to sit down for 5 minutes and then take time for myself, to use that entire time slot just looking at things rather than prioritizing yourself.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And I suppose, when I do that, I'll end up on the bloody phone for 40 minutes. That would have
yeah,
got me to the gym and back.
exactly.
Stupid thing.
It's not as such. It's a very easy trap to fall into, and I think a lot of the time we're not aware that we're doing it, or we might look back afterwards and say, "Oh, I should have just gone to the gym." But at the same time, it is your way of taking that time back. But at the same time, what I'm really hearing is that you do want to look at allocating some of that time at least to going to the gym and taking a bit of space for yourself instead of maybe scrolling when you're at home.
Yeah, and I paid bloody €300 for the damn pleasure of membership. I might as well get something out of it.
Exactly. Like, you've already got the membership.
Mm,
Um, when do you think, is it something you would want to do to start going to the gym a little bit more often?
yeah, as I say, like, I used to really enjoy it, but do you know where I think where my downfall is? I get off the road and I get home, make a cup of tea, and go, "Hmm," now I can relax. And I think if I kind of maybe got in there before that, like just do it on the way home or something.
Yeah, so it sounds like once you get home, that's kind of your shutdown, end of day.
Yeah,
Okay,
turn off.
finished. So what you said is a really, really good idea there, that maybe if you can go to the gym either before or after work, before you actually get back to home, that might actually suit your lifestyle a bit better than trying to pressure yourself when you've already got home.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best window to to aim for.
Well, that sounds wonderful. And how do you think is there anything you think you can do to make that a bit easier for yourself?
I'd probably take the first step and actually put my runners in my car.
That would be a good one, yeah.
Put a little kit bag in there and keep my headphones, just sort of have everything ready to go.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Like I
If you
literally
have
drive past it coming off the M50. So like I'd sit there and I'd drive past it every day going, oh, there it is, and I've got nothing on for the next hour. I've got to get home because I haven't got any gear or anything. So
that sounds like a really good solution then, to have your gear and your gym bag in the car. I think from what you've said that could really be a solution for you.
okay, I'm gonna have to go out and buy myself a bag this weekend, aren't I?
Can be motivation sometimes.
I'll get really nice. Actually, don't they say that in the gym that, you know, if you get yourself a really cool gym kit, that you're more inclined to go, so maybe I should treat myself to, you know, new fancy leggings and whatnot.
Exactly. So do you think that plan then of you maybe having your gym kit and your runners in the car and stopping off before you get home into the gym, even if it's for 5 minutes or even for 20, do you think that would be something you would be willing to try?
More likely, yeah. I think I've just got to readjust my expectations from, oh, it's got to be an hour doing, you know, serious workout, to just flip and do 10 minutes on a bicycle. And that's okay.
It is.
I've
It's
just
perfectly
switched that
okay.
mindset.
Exactly. And I do think we're all very hard on ourselves in that sense. We all expect ourselves to give 110% in pretty much all areas of our lives. But there is no such thing as 110%, you know, we all have just 100. So 10 minutes on the bike is more than okay. And it's 100% more than what you were doing.
Even 30% would be a success, I suppose.
It would. It would. I think from what you've said, and it is important to you, that time that you have that time. So I do think that it sounds like it could really be something for you to try. And if it works, great, even if it gets you 5 minutes twice a week.
Right, I shall report back. And now here it is for public record and recorded that I will buy myself a nice bag this weekend and put it in the car, and I shall report back to you at our next team meeting to see if I actually got in there at any stage.
Well, I am looking forward to hearing, and you'll have to send me a picture of your bag when you get it.
And I will do.
Thanks so
Thanks.
much, Gillian. So thank you, Gillian, for that. I know that wasn't easy. And now it's recorded, so fair play. I think
I know Phil's going to be after me too. Now there's real accountability.
yeah, so that I suppose was just a small role play just to give you all an idea of what motivational interviewing can look like. Sessions can look like it could be just, you know, very much building the relationship. It can be, you know, just exploring the ambivalence. You know, it's not always going to be, okay, we sit down, we follow this exact formula, and now there is a change. You know, that's not reality. So you may go back and forth over a few steps a couple of times. A person might not be interested in making a change, or they might be motivated this week and maybe less inclined to engage next week, and that's okay. We are there, as we've all said, with the person. We're going on a journey with them. We're not leading them. There is a little bit of guiding, as Gillian said at the start, but we are not directing. So if a person is not, you know, ready to commit to something at the end of session 1, like, you know, that's totally okay. That's not real life. So just to keep that in mind. Okay, so then going forward, if you are interested in learning more about motivational interviewing, what can you do? So this is excellent advice, Linda.
Sorry, Linda, I love it. Yeah, I shall channel my inner what's his face.
So there are lots of things you can do. So the first is to seek further training. The PCI College usually have Mint certified trainers, delivering, well, if it was good enough for Matt Damon, that is fair. They have Mint certified trainers who deliver full day motivational interviewing courses. So they would do an introductory session, and then you can do further ones if you like. It can also be useful to practice the skill in maybe peer supervision sessions. When I was first exploring motivational interviewing, I used family and friends as guinea pigs for myself to practice the skill. And I also then, when working with clients, started, I suppose, rather than using this skill straight out, I might notice how often I used open-ended questions or facilitated those conversations, or, so little steps like that before. So once I felt confident then and competent in using the skill, I then started using it with the people I'm supporting. So, there's lots of different things you can do to explore that a bit more. And I can send on maybe a few links to Laura and Alan afterwards if you're interested.
Well, thanks very much, ladies. As usual, it was fantastic again. Two things happened to me there during that presentation. One was that I got really motivated about motivational interviewing again, and said I really want to get stuck into this. And the second thing was, I kind of feel like I want to go out for a run now, because everything you were saying, Gillian, was the same as how I was feeling about my own life. And listening to Natasha talking me through made me feel like I wanted to get out there and do some as well. But I'm not committing to that meeting.
And if anybody else wants to come on and turn on your screens at this stage just to engage, because I see a few little comments coming in there.
Yeah.
You're absolutely free if there are any questions. Linda, I saw you mentioning there about using it in supervision. So I've lost my chat box. And yet there's a whole area of using motivational interviewing in leadership roles. So they call it MI lead. And so I've got some brilliant books on it. I can send you on because I know where you live. So yeah, it's absolutely really good for supervision.
I have found it very helpful for that, in terms of if there's maybe we're seeing, I suppose, certain patterns in supervision where, maybe there's something going on for the person. It can be really, really useful, I suppose, to increase motivation for learning, for engagement, for, I suppose, moving on from certain things. If we're seeing a reoccurrence of certain patterns, that it can be helpful to use this process to examine that a bit more closely. So I would absolutely agree with that, Linda.
I think I was, sorry, it took me a while to find the bit where my microphone went on. I think I was thinking more from the supervisor role bit, going back to some of your earlier slides that Gillian had about directing and telling people what to do. And I think as a supervisor, I'm very good at slipping into that role. And I think if supervisors had more training about motivational interview, it would change our style in a supervision session.
Yeah. And it's coming up very much.
I think as a manager and as a supervisor, you get very focused sometimes on task-orientated processes, because you've only got an hour once every 4 weeks or something, and it feels very kind of process-driven, which is not what supervision should be. That perhaps those principles of motivational interviewing would shift the focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And that guiding style is supervision.
Exactly.
It's absolutely supervision. And so you do see it being used more sort of in the corporate environment, in management training, and sort of a lot of that servant leadership stuff is sort of going down the same road. Thanks, Linda. Will I stop recording so that people might feel more comfortable if they want to come forward for a moment?